Welcome everyone to the Bayou Culture Gathering for May 24th, 2024. We're very excited to have you here today. We will be talking with Jeanette. Look, see, I did it. I got nervous. Dubinin. It's three syllables, right? We had this conversation before. I was like, Jeanette, I'm going to mutilate your last name. And when I go to try to say it, I know I'm going to get in my head and I'm going to get nervous. And so it happened. So at least you were forewarned. Jeanette Dubinin. Did I say it right? I was close. Okay, great. Jeanette's with CPEX, the Center for Planning Excellence. And 7 years ago, there was a program done that was called Rising Above. And I was a participant of that, but also Summer Skarke, Mr. Tommy Eschete, and Richie Blink were also participants representing their communities. And so today we want to check in a little bit about what Rising Above was, and then we want to talk to the folks that participated to see how do things look like after 7 years. So thank you all for being with us today. Our management team is made up of myself, Maida, Rachel, Gary. We all represent different organizations, and we work together to bring this program to you every month. Sort of our disclaimer is that we don't support any particular adaptation or management strategy. We're here more to have conversations and to look to see what are the best pathways forward with some of the challenging things that we have to deal with. We'd like to say thanks to all of our partners, Folk Life in Louisiana, the Wetlands Discovery Center, Louisiana Folklore Society, Center for Bayou Studies at Nichols, and Center for Louisiana Studies at UL. And of course, big thanks to all of our funders. Without their support, we would not be able to bring this program to you monthly. And that's the National Endowment for the Arts, the Barataria Terrebonne National Estuary Program, the National Wildlife Federation, the M.J. Sindler Family Fund for Culture and Media, Louisiana Office of Cultural Development through the Arts Council, and Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities. It's always wonderful to be able to take so much time to read out all of those names. Without their support, we couldn't do the work that we do. And if you want more information about the Bayou Culture Collaborative and what we do, you can go to louisianafolklore.org or contact us at the Bayou Culture Collaborative at gmail.com. So now I would like to pass this on to Maida to talk a little bit about her passing it on workshops.
Yeah, I'm really excited. We've had 10 different tradition bearers funded this spring, and I want to share with you. And all the funds have been given away, and everything's planned for this year. Hopefully, we'll have funds in the next year for us. But I want to share with you about an upcoming one that's really exciting. Adrian Guillory Chapman is going to present Tales for Kids right in Kourigini, and that's Louisiana Creole. The workshop is actually full now, but they've had so much interest that they're opening up the second half of it in the afternoon for the public, if y'all would like to come and see what the children ended up writing in Creole. And I'm afraid my Creole is not strong enough to read that, but yeah, I'm really excited. This is part of a year-long project with the State Museum focused on Louisiana languages. It's really exciting. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Maida. So this is the agenda for today. We're going to be talking to the folks that participated in the Rising Above Symposium. And then there's going to be a moment for questions and answers. We're then going to ask the panelists what their hope for the coast is. We'll give you a little bit information about the working groups and when they meet. And then we'll open everything up to you guys for any announcements that you may have. And then we'll have informal discussion until 1:30. So with that, I am very excited to have this panel today that will be moderated by Jeanette with CPEX. And with us, we have Summer Skarke, who's an educator from Chauvin, Mr. Tommy Eschete, who's a former mayor of Thibodaux, and Richie Blink, who is a captain of the Delta Discovery Tours out in Buras. And so, Jeanette, I will hand it over to you. And thank you so much for all the work that you've done in putting all of this together. We're really excited to have you.
Okay. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, great. You got me all nervous now too, Jonathan, but I'll make it. So thank you for having me. I'm Jeanette Dubinnen. I'm with the Center for Planning Excellence, and like Jonathan had alluded to, I want to talk about a symposium we held about 7 years ago, and it was called Rising Above Symposium, and it grew out of the map, actually, of the coastal master plan that showed flood risk in coastal Louisiana. And at the time, and even now, if you go to their website, you can see the different flood levels that are, I don't want to say predicted, but could potentially happen in Louisiana. And if you look a little further, you can see several communities that are in very interesting levels of flood risk. And so we took this opportunity and started engaging with 3 communities in order of decreasing flood risk in this case. So we engaged with people from Buras in Louisiana, which was at the highest flood risk and I assume still is, Chauvin, Louisiana, and then Thibodaux in Louisiana, obviously, Terrebonne and Lafourche Parish, respectively. And we, in addition to a couple exercises that I wanted to get into more detail later, the effort resulted in a 2-day workshop, and you can see the participants sitting here. And we used the methodology known as 3 horizons, and it's a typical planning exercise, actually, where you look at what is currently going on, and then have a discussion with the community members around where you would like to be in the future. And so we did that for both Buras, Chauvin, and Thibodaux, and also identified what do you need to do to get from where you are right now to where you want to be in the future. And so you can see the work we all did at that time on the picture with the sticky notes. And it was so much fun, and there was lots of realization. We had lots of partners participating in this. The state was present. There were also nonprofit partners, so it was a collective effort. So one of the outputs was that there were action plans developed for Buras, Chauvin, and Thibodaux based on this 3 horizon exercise, and some key findings that you can find here. And you'll probably know that these are still good today, these findings. And I think that we have all made some progress on those outcomes and findings. Just read them real quick. We need a vision for a future coast. We need good information to make good decisions. We need to look at long-term planning, and we need greater collaboration. And I think the Bayou Culture Collaborative is, for instance, one of those great examples where that has progressed since 2017. To lead up to this workshop, we conducted interviews, like I mentioned earlier, with representatives of their respective communities. And so today, I'm so glad to see some of the interviewees from way back then represented here. And so I'm going to kick it off with a discussion with Richie Blink. I pulled an interview quote from way back 2017. And so Richie at the time said, "So what I see happening here is that the older people are going to die there. The people my age are doing this thing where they might live in multiple locations before they finally get out permanently. The younger kids, some are staying, but they're just kind of trying to get out the first chance they get." And so I wanted to ask Richie, how do you feel about this now? What has happened? Is this still true? And just tell us what's happened since 2017, since you made that statement.
Hi, Jeanette. I think most of this statement is true, except for maybe the first line about the old people getting the privilege to die there. Unfortunately, the federal government, through Flood Risk 2.0, has walked back that grace for those folks, which has caused some serious social issues. I think at the time, at least for me, Flood Risk 2.0 wasn't something I could have imagined happening. During my time, since the symposium, I served as a parish council member in Empire and Buras for 4 years, and the complaints of this particular program were quite vast and included things like domestic abuse. People couldn't get out of bad situations because of this climate policy of the U.S. But I think the rest of this quote is somewhat true, right? I live in Empire full time, but I spend a good bit of time in suburban New Orleans. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Summer, we also talked with you, and you said that I think the people here are resilient. I think that's why they don't maybe realize what's going on, or they don't do anything about it, because we've always just picked everything up and moved about our business and came back to normal. So similar question to you, what has changed? I mean, obviously you've had Ida since 2017, and how is Chauvin now, and how resilient are people?
Summer, you're on mute. You gotta unmute yourself.
All right, can you hear me now? I wanted to kind of start when we were at the symposium and people were saying, where do you see education in 10 years? Like, where do you see your school? And they were saying, are kids going to get there in a boat? Like, what is your school going to look like when it's underwater in the area? And I remember getting mad and I remember crying because I didn't want to hear what they had to say. And I was like, I've always lived here. People are always going to live here. The land is always going to be here. It's like my mind could not possibly understand us not being able to live at the place that I grew up. And like you said, since then, Ida hit. And 3 of the schools in this community, the one that I taught at the time, that I couldn't possibly imagine being surrounded by water, is no longer in this community. So now the school has been moved up the bayou and 2 schools are completely closed down. And the school 2 seconds from my house has completely been knocked down. All you see is like land and dirt right now, and they're going to rebuild it. So something that upset me so long ago, and I honestly thought, like, I get that you got to plan, I get you got to do things, but people are resilient and we're all just going to be able to live here. Because I think I was naive to the reality of, like, that's not the truth of what's going to happen. And in this area right now, you can't even sell houses. You have to rent because people cannot afford the insurance. So at this point, if I wanted to move somewhere else, I would either have to make my house a bed and breakfast or put it on Airbnb or rent, because people can't afford to buy the house and pay the insurance. With that being said, I agree with my quote is that, we just picked everything up and we moved back to normal as best as we could. However, the normal has shifted. Now we are a community without schools. And, with each passing hurricane, if we don't continue to preserve our culture, and that's why at the beginning, Jonathan had talked about the schools, how we, what was the name of the day we did?
The Bayou School Reconnect.
Yeah, the reconnect. Having a reconnect, we realized how important it was for us to get together and how important it was for us to share, the memories of those things. Because if we don't do that, then we're going to lose those things that we value so much. And the things that we value so much are each other and company. It was the gathering is what was really important. Maybe not so much the schoolhouse, but being together in the schoolhouse that no longer exists. And now we're moving up. And with those things, culture and stuff changes because you're in a different place now. And so things aren't the way they were when you were in your community.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Summer. Well, Jonathan, I think you foresaw what might happen in the future. You said at the time that we're going to get hit with a storm. That's a certainty. We don't know when, but when it happens, it'll be a catalyst to make people move. How do you feel about that now?
Yeah, it happened. Like we saw it happen. And what is even more heartbreaking is it's going to happen again. And we know that it's going to happen again. And it's just the movement of people will continue, um, will continue to move up the bayou. I I remember going to one of the CPEX, it's the big conference that you guys do.
Yeah.
Um, and this was before Ida and all this happened. And I sat next to Maida, in fact, at it. And at that conference, the big topic was insurance. And they said at that conference that insurance is going to be what is going to force people out. And I took that message back to people in my community, and it's one of those things that people are like, yeah, I can see that happening, but fast forward to now, and we are living it, and it's really difficult. It's really hard. And I wanna acknowledge something that Richie said that I think is so important. He said that, older people having the privilege to die there. That is such a beautiful statement that I think we it's not a billboard because it's too depressing to put that on a billboard, but like what a statement. And it's as if our old people will not have the privilege to die in the area. And part of it is not even about it's underwater. It's of what Summer said about the insurance cost. And if I want to move, but I can't because I can't sell my house because nobody can afford the insurance payments, which is, makes the mortgage astronomical. Um, all of these pieces that were talked about a few years ago, it's all we're seeing it. We're seeing it right now. I remember sitting next to Summer in the symposium and listening to the folks in Buras talk about all the changes, and it was kind of scary listening to them. And then I talked to Summer, and we said, like, that's going to be us. Fast forward, and it is us, and it doesn't feel good.
Thank you, Jonathan. Well, Tommy, at the time being the mayor of Thibodaux, we had asked you a couple of questions about your community, and one of them was about whether you're a receiving community. And so you had said that, yes, we've been a receiving community since Katrina. Some of the people that came after Katrina stayed. And more recently, rising flood insurance costs have people moving. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Have people moving up here. Well, how has that gone any further, or what is your assessment of today's situation given the things that we just heard and insurance trouble and people unable to sell houses?
Yeah, Jeanette, it's at a point now where that influx of our neighbors from Lower Lafourche and sometimes even Lower Terrebonne has increased multiple times. And the problem is not the fact that they want to move; it's the fact that they have to move. I think Jonathan, was a perfect example of. We talk about insurance costs, but it's affordability all the way across the board. Insurance is just probably the most glaring part of it. Now we're faced to a situation where people can no longer even afford to build, even when they want to migrate north. And I think, even though Thibodaux may have been a location for our friends and neighbors in lower part of Lafourche and Terrebonne to migrate, the insurance industry is going to try to move those people north of I-10. I don't know that they're going to keep coming to Thibodaux and to Houma. I think if you haven't experienced the shock of insurance rates in the last 2 or 3 years, you will. Some people are fortunate to not have had that happen to them, but it will happen. We're hoping that the new insurance commissioner will implement some type of reform and get the marketplace open to where we can have more companies competing for those clients. But at the end of the day, you know, they have so many people who want to stay home. They want to stay in Lower Lafourche and Lower Terrebonne. And they're willing to take the physical risk. They simply can't afford to live there anymore. And that's the sad part. I mean, we have our arms open, but I don't know how much longer Thibodaux can continue to do that, especially since, you know, you like to plan to expand infrastructure to accept a bigger population. But, you know, now you're expanding infrastructure kind of on the go. And that's not the right way to do it. So those are the struggles. I know the new administration, Thibodaux, has those same struggles and challenges as does everybody. I think the biggest issue again here is that our infrastructure needs to expand if we can continue to accept those people in our community, which we love to have, but I don't know if we simply can afford to do that any longer.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We probably have more to talk about, but at this time, I'd like to use the opportunity to thank both Pam and Justin Kozak, Pam Jenkins and Justin Kozak, who I've seen in the audience, who led the interviews at the time. And I wanted to thank Jonathan for bringing this to our attention to do this at this meeting. It was a great opportunity to connect with Richie and Summer and you, Jonathan, and Tommy. And so with that, thank you so much for having me. And I think we can answer some questions or attempt to anyway, if there are any.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeanette. Justin, I see that you're there, and Gary, I'll come to you if you don't mind in just a second. But Justin, you were there, you did the interviews. What's your take on where we were 7 years ago and what you're seeing happen here, and from the comments that were made by the panelists, what are you thinking?
Well, it's good to see everybody. It's not nice to see that a lot of what we were worried about, you know, we've been seeing happen a lot. You know, the storms are an acute event that really reveals some vulnerability, and then there's that chronic, that long-term, are people coming back, are they leaving, all of that, and dealing with it. And then folks are talking about insurance and the cost of living and all of that. And that, it's just trying to sound helpful, but it's hard, you know, because I've met all of you. I sat down and talked with a lot of you, and just the joy of life and the attachment to a place and being able that, you know, sharing that with me, you know, allowed me to kind of see into that through that window a little bit, and I don't have the word. It just sucks. And, you know, we're talking a lot about insurance, and I was on a call the other day, and I was at a conference recently, and there was a moderator, Catherine Hayhoe. She's kind of a famous climate change scientist. I think she's at Texas Tech, but good communicator, and she's like a minister. But she was moderating a panel that included somebody from the insurance agencies, somebody from the banks. It was like Swiss Munich reinsurance agency, a bank, a major like global bank, the World Bank like development fund and like or infrastructure fund, and then like the United Nations like development fund, right? So they're thinking about infrastructure building out. Tommy mentioned infrastructure. Other folks mentioned insurance. You know, somebody in the chat mentioned like homeowners insurance and all of this. And the question that was posed to all of them was, you know, are we accounting for risk well enough, right? Because the Rising Above was like, how do we deal with this risk and this rising risk? And, you know, like look at the lead time on certain things. And The UN guy said, no, absolutely not. We're having trouble accounting for all of this risk in investments and building out, right? But those investments put people in a place that's going to be risky in the future. And that's like, that's a problem. They don't want to do that. The banks said, no, we are absolutely not. We're having trouble accounting for all of this risks and the costs of those risks and stuff moving forward. The World Bank guy said, nope, our infrastructure, we're still struggling to damage with that. The last guy on the list was the insurance guy. He goes, oh, no, we're good. And they were like, wait a minute, explain that. And he goes, we reevaluate our insurance costs and what it costs to run insurance and that every year, right? I mean, I have my auto insurance now is reassessed every 6 months. So those risks and those added costs are being built into insurance. So insurance, because of its business model, is just they're able to show the direction that a lot of this stuff is going in the first place.
Yeah.
And it's scary, and it's going to take a lot of leadership, higher up than most of the people on this call, to address that and to make banks and people that want to invest and people that want to build, all those things happen fast. You put that on the ground fast, but then it's a very long-term impact to that. So I don't know, I'm probably rambling at this point.
No,
But
I appreciate
thanks for the
that, man.
opportunity. Yeah.
No, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Pam, are you on the call? I just feel like I need to give you a little bit of space if you'd like to say anything, since you were part of those interviews, before we go to Dr. LaFleur. Pam Jenkins.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm here. I don't have. I thought the people we interviewed were just as eloquent this time as they were 7 years ago. So I want to talk about something else for a minute. Is the price that all of you and me as well, living in New Orleans, pay for living here, and how that has gotten worse. And I don't mean economically, I mean emotionally, socially, all the kinds of ways about making decisions, because this area is so vulnerable. So I think that a lot of good things have happened. I think this collaborative here is one of the most significant things that have happened in the last 7 years. But I also think that we have to keep figuring out what the next thing is. I'm really worried that we will not be prepared for what's coming this summer. And maybe later on we can kind of talk about that, because I think we know more now. Ida really taught us that something can come up from the Gulf and it looks like it's over and it's not.
Yeah.
And I really like to think what we've learned in 7 years, or we've learned in 19 years since Katrina, about what the dimensions of risk are for us going forward.
Thank you for that. Gary.
Well, my question was mostly to former Mayor Tommy Eschete. I can tell that you have a handle on like the formula that would work for a receiving community to say yes. And I was wondering, do you see some communities that are saying yes to this idea? You know, I know Thibodaux did a good job with what it had, but we also got the word from you just now that it was a struggle in Thibodaux, probably because you were kind of making the plane while you were flying. I think that's similar to what you said.
Right.
Do you see it working somewhere like above I-10? Is Baton Rouge or Covington or some of those communities saying yes and getting ready?
I believe they are, but I believe they have, again, from the standpoint of they have the opportunity. I think from a geographic standpoint, that the impact is not as great on the Covingtons and the Hammonds and the Baton Rouge area that it is on us down here. Hopefully, it gives them the opportunity to do some long-term, long-range planning. Because I know they feel those the influx of new residents in that area, and of course those areas have been growing leaps and bounds. Down here again, with the possibility of having an extra, 10 or 15,000 people in our area in a couple of years because of a result of a storm event causes havoc for us. Whether it's and it's really mostly traffic. It's great to have everybody spending money in town, but if you can't get people moving around and you can't get them into schools and then our infrastructure takes a beating, and there's no easy way to do it on the fly. There's just no way to do it. So we certainly don't want to have a situation where we're not inviting to people in lower parts of Lafourche and Terrebonne and St. Mary. But I think at some point in time, they're going to get frustrated with the lack of development of infrastructure, and they'll be looking for another place to go.
Thanks.
Thanks for the question and answer. Anybody else have any questions right now? We may have time for one or two more questions. If not, I have a question, and this is for Summer. Summer, I read through your interview that was done for the symposium, and there was one passage that I found really moving, was when your mom put a scapula on the front door and kissed the door of the house goodbye for a storm that you guys evacuated from. And it was the first time that you had thought, wow, what do you mean we're not coming back to this place? And so fast forward to Hurricane Ida, that storm, your parents were able to go home and to their house, but Ida was a different story. How are your parents now, or how was that experience for them, and how are they now? And what if we have an Ida storm this year? Like, how are they gonna handle that? You're on mute, Summer. You're still on mute, bro.
Sorry. I would just like to preference that my father, for a period of time in his life, was a trawler. And so he was a firm believer that you don't leave for a storm, because this is your home and you got to stay and protect it. So when we got to a point in my life where we started evacuating, I knew that things were getting a little more serious. When we left for Ida, I honestly didn't know if we were coming back. And my mother and father's home was totally destroyed. It had to be gutted out. They had to buy a mobile home and a camper. They had to buy a camper. It was put in their yard. The contractor that they hired to help them kind of screwed them over, for lack of a better word, in the moment. And they had to kind of find someone else to do the work. Because of that, my mother and father lived in a camper at 77 years old for about a year and a half, if not almost 2 years. And what happened is it physically took over them. My mom and dad weren't moving a lot because they were just in a camper and there was nowhere to move. And so their health declined tremendously. I saw them like withering away physically because of the placement of where they were living. They are back in their home. Not this Mother's Day, but last Mother's Day was actually the weekend that they moved in. And their health has not really rejuvenated since then. We've had a lot of medical issues that have stemmed from some of the things I think kind of happened without the movement that they were used to having. I don't know that my mother physically, but even more than that, my mother mentally could take losing everything again. And for my mother, that was the hardest thing. I'm not going to say my mom's a hoarder, but she's a hoarder of memories. So like, birth certificates, something your kid writes in kindergarten, baptismal dresses, your first little chick of hair, your belly button that you planted under the rose bush, a piece of rose from the rose that the belly button was planted under. My mother had all those things, your first tooth. And it all got thrown away when the people went in, the mitigation team came in and just tossed everything that my mom cherished. And she's still salty about it. Like, she still gets upset and it still hurts her. And she understands that just what happened and she can't go back and get those things and you can live life without them. But it really just took them down. And so while the hurricane destroyed the community, it also took a lot of the joy away from my parents because they really were in a struggle for a long period of time. And so yeah, I don't know. I don't know that she could take, or maybe she would take the loss of something better this time because she's been through it. And so that's the drill now. I think it was the first time they really got hit in such a way. So, and they're 78 now, so they don't have much time. Like, like like he said in the first little slide, you the privilege to die here. It's what they want to do. They don't want to die somewhere else. This is what they know.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Richie, his name was.
Yeah, Richie. That's right.
I'm sorry, Richie. I was like, I couldn't think. I was trying.
You're okay. You're okay. Like trying to maybe change this to a positive note, right? One of the things, and that look, and not that wasn't it's the reality, right? And the reality of where we're at, it's tough. It's tough dealing with that. It's even more difficult, as Dr. Jenkins mentioned, having the PTSD associated with going through a storm and approaching a hurricane season where you see the waters of the Gulf are the warmest that they've ever been during this time. It doesn't make you feel too good. However, let's talk about what makes us feel good. Let's think about where we can be hopeful in this type of situation. And so I'd like to ask Richie first, what is your hope for the coast?
Thanks, Jonathan. My hope for the coast. My hope for the coast is that the humans can continue to thrive in these really productive places. If we look back about how the humans have occupied this area, there's tons of mounds that were built by indigenous people that had 2,000 years of occupation there. And to think that some bad weather and changing insurance is going to run the humans out of South Louisiana is that's what's going to get us. So I hope that we could figure out how to live and build better. I think the world needs people that are living on the front lines of climate change, figuring these things out in really nuts and bolts types of ways, figuring out using different building materials, methods, techniques. I went to the permit office here to try and build a floating house out of an old tugboat, and they laughed at me. The building permits have, like, that's just not a thing, and that's probably the most resilient thing I could do on my property. So we need to move and figure out different ways of living more resiliently. I think folks need to get the support they need to adapt in place with different pilot projects. Contractors in South Louisiana need to know and understand how to build an octagon house, which is more wind resilient. Ida was a huge wind play. We were thinking about water, people put all their valuables in the attic, so we need pilot projects to help the builders figure this out. And I think for the receiving communities, we need to be building living neighborhoods that avoid some of the climate change traps that we've fell into to begin with, like not these sprawling neighborhoods that are just suburbia, but truly walkable, like 15-minute places that are tacked on to the places that people are moving to begin with. People in Buras tend to self-select to Franklinton, people in Chalmette, maybe more so Picayune and Carrere, Mississippi, but building the living neighborhoods where people are already going, and giving folks the social and financial help to make that difficult or easy decision. Those are some of the things that I hope for the coast.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you for that, man. Thank you. Summer, what's your hope for the coast?
So because I don't have like the engineering mind and I'm more, English based and I saw the benefit of the reconnect with the community. I guess my hope for the coast, because this is where my mind is that we can continue to find ways to preserve our culture, whether that be through art, music, cooking, gathering, music, poetry, whatever it is, in whatever form, even skills like, building cast nets, making corn shuck dolls, like all these things that, define us as people. If we can just continue to find ways to preserve those things so that if the land physically can't be here, because if we are not able to stop that from happening, that we can still preserve the little pieces of what make us who we are as people, no matter where we are, that we would have that to hold on to.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Mr. Tommy, what's your hope for the coast? Oh, I think you're still on mute, Mr. Tommy.
I try not to make this political, but I've over the years, I'm 66 years old and seen the oil and gas industry go up and down many, many times. And hopefully, because it impacts our coast so much, whether it's jobs, it even affects the seafood industry because of the amount of people that is attracted by the oil and gas industry. There's some stabilization of the oil and gas industry. I think it's still feasible. I know, the climate concerns. One side of the fence is wanting to get rid of it. I know our administration in DC wants to get rid of it. I'm kind of hoping we can find a happy medium. I think we need the industry still. It's still a viable industry. Someday down the road, we may be green, but at this point in time, because I'd like to see the people stay home. Summer's comment with reference to preserving the culture is dead on, and the only way we can do that is keep people home. People scatter to all ends of the country, those cultures will disappear, and we certainly don't want to see that happen. So I guess if we're going to spend the millions and possibly even billions of dollars in coastal restoration, then we have to follow up with that and make sure that we have the people and the industry here to justify the expenditure of that many dollars, whether it's federal dollars or state dollars, and to keep our coast viable from an industry standpoint is what I would hope to see in the future.
Thank you so much for that. Jeanette, if you can finish this part off for us, what is your hope for the coast?
As a person who's worked in a planning organization for a long time, my hope is that we embrace maybe a way to come together and think about a new coast, because holding on to our current coast is increasingly more challenging. And so I think together we can come up with a way that we can continue living here and practicing and living in our culture and, be resilient. But I don't think we can do that in the way that we have. And so I think we need to come together and figure out what that looks like going forward. And I really, really hope that we can come together on this.
Yeah.
That's my hope.
Thank you so much for that. All right. Thank you so very much, Jeanette, to Summer, Richie, Mr. Tommy. Thank y'all very much for being here with us. We would like for you guys to stick around after 1 o'clock. We do our informal discussion. And so I'm sure that our group has a lot of other questions for you. This is some information about our position statement for the BCC. If you'd like to, you can scan that QR code, or you can go to louisianafolklore.org to get more information about that. We encourage you to check that out. And then also part of what we do is we've got several working groups that drill down a little bit deeper on some of these topics. And so if these topics are of interest to you, we encourage you to get in touch with the conveners. We've got the Cultural and Coastal Planning that will be meeting Monday, June 10th at 2 p.m. The convener is Amy. Then we also have the Louisiana French Language Group that meets Tuesday, June 11th at 6. The convener is Ivy for that. Artists and Tradition Bearers Wednesday, June 26th at 7 p.m. The conveners are Lola and Mark. Protecting Collections is Thursday, June 20th or 27th at 2 p.m. The convener is PUD. And then Preparing Receiving Communities, that's going to be Tuesday, June 25th at 12:30. They're gonna do an in-person and virtual, and so you can see the chat for the location and more details. The convener there is Tracy and Haley. We hope that you'll join us for next month's gathering. We will have Jessica Dandridge, who is the executive director of the Water Collaborative of Greater New Orleans. She's an amazing human doing some amazing work. So we hope that you'll be with us for that. You can visit the website for registration details or check out Facebook. You'll usually see the link come through where you can register. That's going to be Friday, June 21st at noon. If we have any announcements from the group, now's the time if you can virtually raise your hand, because that'll throw you to the front of the queue. Otherwise, or you can just make your announcement now. Yes, Jeanette.
Well, I just wanted to share with you all that the Governor's Advisory Commission for Coastal Protection, Restoration and Conservation will have I believe its first meeting this year. It's going to be on June 4th at 9:30 at the Water Institute in Baton Rouge. And looks like Maida put the information in, but there's also other possibly relevant meetings happening, which you can view in the chat, where I'm going to put it in a second. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other announcements? All right.
Jeanette, do you think that is that a public meeting to attend, or I have a feeling the council is probably a pretty tight group of people.
The commission meetings are public meetings to my knowledge.
Okay. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank y'all for that. So this kind of concludes the formal part of our presentation, but we would love to have you all stick around to be able to carry on the conversation. So thanks again for joining us. If you would like to find out more information, again, louisianafolklore.org, or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you so much for being with us, and we hope to see you at the next gathering.